Hey everybody, Rob from Karma Comic Chameleon coming at you with another ProRevenge story. Cousin of a bully from another school bullies me. Let's jump right in. Hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. I'm not 100% sure if this qualifies as a proper ProRevenge story or not, or if it's more petty or nuclear. I read the rules, I have read different stories from each board, and I'll just let the jury of the common reader and mods decide. Also, sorry about the length, it is a fair read. This story also happened several years ago. I'm far from my school days. Backstory: my first 2 years of school, kindergarten and first grade, occurred at a Catholic elementary school. The reason for leaving was a very rude first grade teacher that, outside of being rude to me in general for silly reasons, crumpled and discarded a parent note for missing school due to my grandfather being in the hospital. We thought he was dying at the time, brain hemorrhage, right in my face before rolling her eyes and telling me to just go sit down, very coldly. There was also another teacher, a nun, in the second grade classes that supposedly had a thing for little boys, abusing them, calling them out publicly, shaming them in front of the class, etc. And my mom wanted none of that, so she moved me to the local public school. As you may already somewhat imagine, being the good little Catholic Christian boy I was meant I was a pretty soft kid. I didn't swear, I didn't really fight back, I was always fat, and I was fairly naive about how cruel the real world is sometimes. Going to public school for me was like walking out to a wolf pack wearing a meat suit. I got bullied a lot. This mostly happened because everyone thought I was strangely soft and never fought back, so I was a relatively easy target. For 5 long years, one bully in particular would make my life hell. I can't remember all the details, and I'm not even sure if I ever did something to start any of it. I doubt it, I just wanted to be everyone's friend at the time. But this kid was straight verbal and a manipulator. He was sort of popular and knew how to pit all the other school bullies against me by spreading rumors or just spreading word he didn't like someone in general. It was literally like being picked on by a mob boss, where the boss never did anything himself 90% of the time, but his cronies did the talking or physical abuse. Things got much worse in 6th grade, my first year at middle school. This meant that 4 other school students joined under one roof, and once he got around, my elementary school bully spread his word and got all the other bullies from the other schools in on the fun. Things got so bad that I couldn't even go to the bathroom during class exchanges anymore because I'd have stuff thrown at me or have my stall door kicked in, etc. Most of my teachers, who dealt with misbehaving students for years, barely gave a damn about my situation either, so I was practically on my own. I had debated and got close to committing suicide on 3 separate occasions, and eventually, once the madness reached a head, I was pulled from school 2 weeks early due to being given detention by an asshole of a teacher who claimed I interrupted the class by telling 4 or 5 kids sitting behind me who were shouting insults, throwing objects at me, and kicking the back of my chair to leave me alone. I never actually completed 6th grade. Over that summer, I spent my time quietly reading, drawing, and receiving counseling for what I went through, since my self-confidence and desire to keep living was practically at 0. Over those months, I improved a bit, though the wounds and scars of 5 years of non-stop bullying ran deep and took their toll. My mother informed me I would be going to a new school at the start of the year, another Catholic one. I had hoped it would be better. I was wrong. The main story: I started the year at the new school and things seemed to be going fairly well. I was left alone for the most part, and other than realizing how much farther behind I was in my lessons due to a shitty public school education, I was faring better. There was one kid in my class, who I'll call Quiet Kid, who was a selective mute. He carried a whiteboard with him all the time to answer teacher-asked questions and overall seemed like a nice kid. I'd come to learn he was the brunt end of the bullying in my school, since he didn't talk or defend himself. One day, while at recess, I noticed that Quiet Kid is playing a game of keep away with several other classmates, most of which who bullied him. Our class grade only had 14 students in it, mind you. A game which might have been called Keep the Ball Away from Quiet Kid. However, on this day, Quiet Kid managed to actually catch the ball and become a player, and not the it person. Upon catching the ball, The main bully tackled Quiet Kid to the ground and held his face against the playground wood chips, saying, "Don't you ever catch that ball again." I decided to be brave. I hated being bullied and didn't want to see others bullied either. I approached the two and said, "Get off him. He caught the ball. It's his turn to keep away." The bully looks up at me, stands up and says, "Hey, I know you. You went to my cousin's school, didn't you?" This was the signature that signed my receipt of bullying contract, as this act of selflessness began a new round of bullying for me in this new school. Even though Quiet Kid was grateful for what I did and we became acquaintances, it was smaller scale and was mostly manipulative mental games, but it started nonetheless. And this time, it was being masterminded by the cousin of the main bully from my public school years. I spent months in shock at this realization, thinking how foolish it was to stand up for the right reason to find out this secret. I eventually dealt with a little over 1 year more of this new bully and his cronies' nonsense before I finally had enough. I was a kettle that was slowly boiling over by this point. The revenge. After about a year and a few months of more nonsense, I was in 8th grade and I was finally reaching the end of my rope. I talked with instructors, I talked with the principal, completely useless. No one ever did anything and they all basically told me to suck it up. My mom and dad both knew what was going on and had begged me for years to just stand up to a bully, but I was too scared to. Why, you may ask? Well, the men in my family are always unusually strong. My father almost beat 2 different people on 2 different occasions half to death with his bare hands. They assaulted him first. One of the times he unflinchingly took a crowbar to the back of the head while inspecting his work truck before returning with his assault. And one of my uncles was a local high school wrestling record holder whose favorite prank to play on people growing up was literally him and 1 or 2 other friends leaving neighbors' cars resting on their front stoop. He was also admittedly a bit of a bully, usually to those who deserved it, and thrashed kids around all the time, according to my mom. I was afraid if I snapped, I'd seriously hurt someone, so I swallowed all my bullying the whole time. Until this one day. One fateful day in 8th grade, we had a substitute teacher. Our regular teacher's mother had passed away, and she was dealing with that. To a regular kid, this meant lax lessons and boring days at school, or more time to chat with friends. To bullies, it meant open season, since any previous student history was left unchecked. The whole day, this bully and his cronies constantly tried to kick my chair out from under my desk, would openly call me names the substitute wasn't aware of, and were doing everything in their power to make my day hell. I was slowly coming undone, and I didn't know what was going to happen, but after almost 7 years of being bullied, I was tired. Very tired. This day of the week in particular was my favorite day, however. I was never into sports as a kid, but what I was into was art. Once a week, we had art class, and that was my favorite class of the week. I could be myself and express myself and do what I love to do. That day, we were doing some finger painting and collage making, and I was going all in. I fueled my creativity with my anger from the hours of nonsense earlier, and was actually starting to cheer up and enjoy myself. I stood up at one point to leave my seat and get some extra paint to finish up my current project, and as I sat down, an all-familiar sound and feeling came over me. Bully tried for the 13th time that day to kick my chair out from under me as he walked behind me, and send my fat ass crashing to the floor. He failed to do so, but I was halfway off my chair when I sat down. I was very, very tired, and finally had enough after all those years. I quickly stood back up and loudly exclaimed, "That's it!" and threw my chair back behind me, and it smashed the table behind it. I quickly marched with murderous purpose around my desk and toward the cretinous cousin of my previous bullying hell before he could sit down. As if in slow motion, he turned to face me, his face at first set in a nefarious grin he was directing toward his cronies, which upon seeing me, quickly fell into a look of frightful dismay. I reached forward, grabbing him by his shirt collar with my right hand, and pushed him back against a nearby table. He tried to defend himself and threw a punch, but like a kung fu master, I caught his fist with my open left palm mid-swing before it made contact, grabbing and squeezing his fist very hard. I proceeded to pull him closer, but also leaned in uncomfortably close to his shocked face, and I said in a very serious tone, You do one more thing to me and I'll f***ing kill you. I held him there for a few more seconds, shooting laser beams from my infuriated eyes into his, ignoring the teacher's pleas for us to stop. I wanted him to know I wasn't joking at all. The look on his face was priceless. He clearly was surprised that I was finally standing up for myself and was probably believing every word I said. I was surprised he hadn't peed himself. I then let both his collar and fist go with a single push and started marching straight to the office without hesitation. I knew I was going to face punishment for this, which was what always happened in public school. Good kids got suspended, heads got away with everything. But I didn't care anymore. I had hurt him, but I finally expressed how serious I was. Bully was soon following behind me, forced to go to the office as well by the art teacher, and he couldn't help but start whining like a yapping puppy. Stupid stuff like, "I will sue you, you ruined my shirt," etc. I actually had ruined his shirt. My hand was covered in yellow paint when I grabbed his collar, and it had been stretched badly by thrashing him about slightly, but I ignored him the whole way. We both sat and waited in the main office for our parents to show up, as the principal called them, and Bully kept whining and making baseless threats against me. When wave 2 of having enough finally struck, I snapped and shouted, "Shut up! I dealt with your bullshit for a whole year. I've had enough of it. Shut up!" The principal reprimanded me for shouting in her office and using foul language, but I could have cared less. I forgot to even make mention of the previous years of bullying from the cousin, but it didn't matter to me. Bully knew what was up. I knew what was up. Eventually, Bully's parents showed, and they had a chat in the principal's private office. When they had finished and were leaving, he shot me a smug look, but I didn't care. My mom showed up too, telling me she had heard about what happened from another friend of mine in the class who had come running out to her car during her end-of-day duties, clapping out the chalk erasers. My mom gave me a hug, and we waited for a moment before being called into the principal's office. When she finally did, the principal had a very disdainful tone and look. She legitimately thought she was going to teach me a lesson that day on appropriate school behavior. But my mom, who had suffered with me for all those years, was having none of it. The conversation went something like this. "Do you know what happened?" "Yes." "I'll have you know, we will not tolerate violence in our school group." My mom cuts her off. "Oh, so instead you'll tolerate my son going through over a year of verbal and physical abuse and do nothing about it instead? My son has been to this office several times to report bullying the right way, and nothing was done." Turns to me. "OP, I'm really proud of you. When we leave here, I'm getting you an ice cream." Principal's face was open-mouthed stupor. My mom got up and simply left her office with me in tow, and I went to my locker to gather some things and left immediately for the ice cream shop. I was almost so happy I could have cried, but I didn't. In the 2 weeks following, I was suspended for a few days, a nice reprieve to be fair, and then contracted a flu, so I missed another week of school. When I came back, I noticed Bully was gone. I asked someone if he was sick, and that's when I found out that while I was gone, the bully had gotten into a fist fight with Quiet Kid, and he was permanently expelled. I don't know who started what or what completely happened, but I wanted to imagine Quiet Kid stood up for himself after seeing me stand up to him, and I was just thrilled that the bully was finally gone, and the last few months of 8th grade went without a hitch. The following high school years were also the best years of my life in school by comparison. Don't be a bully, and if you're quiet and gentle like me, don't let bullies f*** with you. I spent all of my elementary school and a good portion of my high school being bullied as well. I know exactly the feelings that OP's talking about. I never got any kind of revenge on my bullies though, and I'm hoping that maybe at some point something will still come up, but school for me was over 20 years ago. I want to thank OP for giving me permission to narrate their story today. You can visit them at the links in the description below on Reddit itself. Please go there and give them an upvote. Once again, this is Rob from Karma Comic Chameleon saying thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, I ask you to hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share it with your friends, and we'll see you in the next one.